Okay guys, so I have a small party trick there for you. You'll notice in the spec there was a bit about kind of getting some bonus marks for doing some funky thing with a list that you probably didn't understand what I was talking about at all. So I'm going to talk you through that now. If we look there at that LI selector, okay, that's saying wherever you have a list item, you want the color to be red. So that's something you're familiar with. If we say there, div LI color blue, that selector is going to select every LI that's somewhere inside a div. So where you list the things like that one after the other, you're saying that's an LI that's inside a div that you're selecting. You're probably not going to use this, but while we have it, we'll talk about it. That greater than sign there is a child selector. And that's saying I want an EM. This is going to apply to every EM that is the immediate child of a P.
Does that mean it's within the P?
No. It means it's the immediate child of the P. So the one on the left there, that EM is inside in a div and inside in a P. So P, EM would apply in that situation. But P greater than EM only applies to the one on the right because it's the immediate child. So you might need something like that, but I don't think you will. No. We will need the first thing. So the party trick now I'm going to show you here is something that you see a lot. It's a fairly common thing to do. And it's actually very clever. I wish I had thought it up myself. But alas, I didn't. No. So here we have a list. And if we look here at the HTML, it's just a common or garden list. You have your UL for your unordered list, and then you have a bunch of LIs and /LIs. Now as it happens, the contents here are all links. So we have links inside LIs, inside a UL. And actually I've wrapped all this up in a div as well and given it a class. If we go to the CSS, we're doing a bunch of things. This is saying wherever you have a div that's of class menu list, so that special div there, this applies to. I'm just doing a bunch of stuff with the colors. I've set the border top to solid and that color. I've set the border bottom to solid and that color. I've set a background color and a margin, and I floated left. So this gives this div here, that border top, border bottom, those different colors in the line there. So nothing strange or startling there really. Done a few things here with the anchor tags. Let me just remove that there a second. If we look here, in general, links appear underlined by default. So the web page, the browser style sheet, underlines links by default. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the text decoration property of the anchors to none, which means the underlining is gone. These things here, this A colon hover, not hoover, hover, that is basically a rollover. So this says if you have, when the cursor is over a particular element, the hover pseudo class, it's called, kicks in. So this is like a class, but it doesn't apply there's no class in the HTML. It applies to actions by the user. So if you have an element, in this case an anchor, and the cursor rolls over it, this style is going to apply, which has the effect of doing this, which I think is quite cool. In the old days, it would have taken a lot of work and a lot of JavaScript to achieve something like that. So here we're using the hover pseudo class. In general, links on a web page have a color, and once the link has been, if it's a link to a web page that has already been visited, that has another color. This link pseudo class here sets the color of a link. I just set that to black, and this visited pseudo class sets the color of a link that's already been visited. I set that to black too. So the fact that these are links and some have been visited and some haven't doesn't actually have an impact on the color of them. No. That's where it starts to get interesting. Here I'm saying if you have an unordered list in the div with the class menu list, then this is going to apply. Now the reason I've done that is I'm going to do some funky things to the ULs and the LIs, but I only want that to apply inside this special div here. I want the rest of the divs on the page, I want the rest of the ULs and LIs on the page to behave normally. Only these ones are going to be the freaky ones. But instead of going, LI class equals freaky LI, LI class equals freaky LI, I'm just saying any LI that's in this div with a freaky class is going to have this apply to it. So for the UL, I just floated it left and did something with the margin. But here now is where it starts to get interesting. I'm going to, piece by piece, style the LIs inside in that div. So any LI that's inside in that div with the freaky class menu list, this is going to kick in for that. So the first thing I'm doing is going to say list style type is none, and ding, those bullet points are gone. You could also specify different bullet points if you wanted, but what we want is no bullet points at all. Next thing I'm going to do is going to change the background color of those LIs to this. Next up, going to put in some padding. This is putting padding to the right of each one. So watch this now. Watch here at about you. Okay, that didn't behave now quite as I was expecting, actually. So I'm glad I didn't tell you what it does, because I'd have been wrong. It's put padding on both sides. I was only expecting padding on one side, actually. Okay. Anyway, you can see, whoops, oh, feck. You can see what it's done is it's put some padding around the sides there. Without it, this element, the container ends just there, and it starts just there. So this gives them a bit of space around them, which is fair enough. You'll want that. Now, this is an interesting one. This is going to put a border that's 1 pixel thick and solid and red on the right of each LI. Now you might think, why won't you just put it all the way around? But you'll see now in a minute why. This is just going to be on the right of the LI, which gives us this. I'll make that bigger just so you can see it. Has anybody experimented with the different styles of borders? Apart from solid. Is there an alternative? There's like a dotted or something. Is it dotted, D-O-T-T-E-D?
Yeah.
Just for the crack there. Oh, that's hideous. Anyway. Put that back to 1 pixel. Okay. Now, this next bit now is the money shot, really. This is what makes it all interesting. I'm going to take each one of those LIs and I'm going to float it left. So they're all going to float left. Remember what float left does? It pushes everything over, it pushes it over to as far as it can go in the left container, and the stuff that comes after it wraps around it. But what happens if you do a bunch of things all floating left when they're one after the other? Well, they basically stack up alongside one another. And now look what we have. All of a sudden, we have a list that's going horizontally across and behaves like a menu. And this border here is the border that's on the right of each LI. I'll just make that bigger again. And it's on the right of each LI. So what you'd have to do then to finish off all the boxes, you'd probably have to select the first list item and just that one, give it a border on the left as well. But we won't worry about that. So I think that's quite clever, and it just goes to show how it's still, it's still a list. It's just a list, a card carrying common or garden list like any other list. But we've applied styling rules to it to make it behave quite differently from what you'd expect. And I'm not going to give you the CSS for this, but actually just to show you, you can really push the boat out, and you can even do like drop downs just with CSS. Look. And that's just in CSS. That's just actually, would you believe, a nested list. This boxer shorts, jockey shorts, swimwear, and sportswear is inside in products. And policies, sales returns, environment, and sales tax. That's a list inside in the policies list. And you can actually do the CSS in such a way that they stack up like that. So it's quite impressive, but you probably won't in your HTML coding careers need to do something that sophisticated. But certainly this is fairly doable. So I've no problem now with you just taking my code there, and if you want to make your menu this way, slapping that in then to your website and just adapting it then to suit your colors. You can even do freaky things like change the background. Actually, let me show you that. That would be nice. I'm going to, in the hover pseudo class, I'm going to say background color and I'll make it gray or something. You see that there? No, the background color is gray. And that's just the hover class. You could even set the background to be an image. I must talk to you someday about using images as backgrounds. It's actually can get quite complicated, but most of you seem to have gotten to grips with it yourself anyway. You know? So you haven't injured yourself on that chair. Is there a piece sticking up? Be careful. No. Okay. Any questions on any of that? So I put a link to that when I remember. I meant to do it yesterday and I forgot again. Yes, sir.
Do you know what the link is for the reservation yet?
Yes, I do. I'll put that on the blog too when I remember. I only got it today. I must test it first to see it does what I think it does. But that's done anyway, that job is done, so I'll have that very soon.
I was just wondering about the hopper task. You know, we have a lot of websites where you put your cursor over a link and you give you like a description and a link. So I'll come up with a new text.
Oh yeah. That's actually the alt attribute. Alt, yeah. Remember I was saying how when you use an image you must do an alt.
Yeah.
You can actually, if I'm not mistaken, put it in an anchor. So I'd say alt equals something like that. And now depending on the browser, some browsers do it, some browsers don't. That one doesn't. Let me see. I know Internet Explorer does, but I don't allow Microsoft products in the house, so I don't have that on my machine. Let's see. I believe that's the alt tag. Yeah? Does it work in Chrome? Well, that's an image map now, though. We're talking about an actual, like, yeah, on an image map we have it, but on an actual link as well, you can make it happen. Yeah. I believe that is just an alt attribute.
Because otherwise sometimes there will be links, but the link mightn't be that long, the word mightn't be that long, but the description could be more.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it's the alt, but I could be wrong now. We'll look it up. You can always, if you find one, open up the source and have a look. I've seen that and I just assumed it was an alt tag, but it might not be. Try it there and see if it works. An alt attribute inside in an anchor and see what happens. Any other questions? Because I gave you an open book exam, I don't feel now morally obliged to have all the information in my head anymore. So maybe it was more for my benefit than for yours. Yes, sir.
Your example of the header footer will work.
My example,
Of the header footer and sides and stuff, it just comes out as one mass of words.
okay, I'll have a look. Yep.